Welcome to the Jewish Education Experience podcast with your hosts, Yasmina and Ari, who will be uncovering gems of wisdom with Jewish educators from around the world.
To our audience, thank you so much. We really appreciate your support, and we appreciate you sharing our podcast with others also. Please consider supporting our podcast financially by contributing via Zelle, JewishEducationPodcast@gmail.com, Cash App, $Jewish Ed Podcast, or by joining our Patreon community, www.patreon.com/Jewish Education Experience Podcast. And to all of you Jewish educators and students of Jewish education around the world, Chizchu ve'imtzu. May you be strengthened and encouraged in your holy endeavors. Gina, we're so happy to have you on the podcast with us today. Is your last name pronounced Tzizik? Did I say that right?
It's Tzizik.
Tzizik.
Silent Z.
Yeah. In the old country, it was Tzizik, and some are Tziziks and some are Tziziks, but we say Tzizik.
So interesting. Okay, so what does it mean? Do you know the background of it at all?
Yeah, what's the old country?
Poland, Russia.
Okay.
Yeah. So I don't know what it means. I guess I should know that.
Oh, yeah, it would be really interesting to find out about that, actually.
Yeah, the closest thing I could think would be chizik, which is like, like strengthening. Like we have a synagogue here, chizuk emuna, which is like the strengthening of faith.
Oh, I like that. I'm going to take that one.
Yeah, there you go.
We're not looking any further. We'll just go with that.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but you have worked in Jewish education for a long time. You've also worked in a Montessori school. And are you currently pursuing a master's in Jewish education, or are you just taking courses just extra for you?
I'm currently pursuing a master's in Jewish education with focus in early childhood. And I previously completed a master's in Montessori education years ago.
Very cool. I know you kind of briefly started your introduction of yourself, but can you tell us more so how you began your educational journey?
Sure. Actually, I was I did my undergrad work and I was an artist. So I was actually studying printmaking and watercolor painting, and I had to take some classes out of my major, which of course nobody wants to do when they're young, right? So I scoped out what would be the easiest possible class that I could take. And I was told that this class on Montessori education, which was a weekend course, an introduction, that would be the easiest thing I could do. So I took it and discovered that I was in love with education after a short time of being exposed to it. And I decided to add education into my major at the end of my junior year of college. So, of course, you know how that goes when you call your parents and you say, "Guess what? I need to do some more schooling than I thought I did."
Oh yeah.
But it was really it was transformative for me. I realized that this idea of being very hands-on, very concrete, really spoke to me as a person, and I wanted to integrate it in. So that was, 35 years ago, and that's pretty much all I've done up until the pandemic. And during the pandemic, I now am producing a lot of art, a lot more than I have in many, many years because I have time at home. But I love both of them.
That's
education
really cool
and art.
that you kind of reconnected with your artistic side again. I mean, I don't know if you still were doing it this whole time or while you've been teaching the past 35 years, or did you kind of put that on hold and focus more on the education?
It was mostly on hold. I did some, I painted, I did things with my children. I did printmaking with the kids at school. I would usually do mono printing or things like that, but it wasn't from March until August of this year, I completed 45 illustrations,
Wow.
which are pretty detailed. And so that will just let you know that I finally had the time to kind of focus on something else. Um, and it was pretty amazing, actually. I'm really happy that I've kind of pushed that out of myself, and it's made me feel more connected in a lot of different ways.
That's really amazing. Hopefully, we could see some of your illustrations one day.
I'll be happy to send you a link and you can see some.
That would be awesome.
No, I was just going to say that I think that it's really important when you're in education to have other interests that kind of feed your soul, because you give so much energy to the children and you want to, and to the families that you're working with, that having some other activity that maybe is related but not fully related, that just feeds yourself, is really, really important. It's, you hear it a lot now about self-care,
Right.
but I think that for me, art connects me spiritually, connects me, to myself, to things beyond myself. And then when people see my work, um, it opens up different doorways. What were you thinking about? Why did you do this? Why did you choose that? And it's always interesting for me to actually hear their response, their questions,
For sure.
seeing things I didn't see. So I think as educators, we want to do that too. We want to grow a good foundation.
I agree. Definitely.
So, Gina, is there a particular educator that you admire?
Well, I'm going to be pretty boring here. So I really like Maria Montessori. She's um, definitely the top of my list, and it never gets old for me. I think that she really saw into the future, and she saw that it was important that we connect children, um, that we are able to allow them, almost protect them to be who God created them to be.
Right.
Montessori was really spiritual, and she talked a lot about these ideas, in her very flowery language. But I can just imagine myself kind of like a quarterback or football player protecting the child from all of these things in the outside world, that are being thrown at parents every day and teachers, things we need to teach them. But she really believed that children were born with all of that inside of themselves, that our job was just to allow it to blossom and to expose them to the next wonder. And I think the focus for me, at least in the coming year and a half as I'm finishing my master's, I'm really thinking a lot about how do children understand wonder? How do they kind of connect to the mystical, if you will, right? Not mystical in a weird way, but that mystical presence that God is. And so I'm thinking a lot about that these days and how that happens, because children are just full of wonder and connection all the time. And I'd love to see them not have it washed away by all kinds of other things. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's so true.
So I guess as a Jewish educator in particular, obviously you're talking about God, you're talking about Hashem. So how do you do that with the age group that you teach, and maybe in particular with the Montessori style?
I think there's a lot of different ways that we do it. And I think the most basic way that is just to look at the world and answer the questions and ask the questions, helping children to wonder and make the connections of all of the things that are around them. I'll give you an example. Last fall, I was outside with some children, and it was about this time, when the leaves are changing. And one of them picked up this leaf and she said, "Look, there's a sunset in the leaf. How did that
Wow.
happen? There's a sunset in the leaf." And I was just like, all the years I've looked at all these beautiful leaves in New England, I never did that ever. But just that was the first thought that she had. And
Oh my
that's,
God.
I think, how we help children to connect to Hashem, to to know that every single thing in their life is part of that. It's not separate. right? It's,
Right.
It's true.
it's everything.
And we learn so much from them, just how they see things. And it's so cool to hear their perspective about things, about God. And I just feel like we learn so much from them.
I think that children under the age of 5 just completely reflect that spiritual radiance. And as long as adults aren't constantly pulling at them, they can keep it as part of who they are. And I think that's kind of our job as an early educator anyway, is to allow children to continually talk about Hashem, spirituality, what they wonder about in a way that we can help them to understand and kind of framework what's happening around them, because they really don't fully understand a lot of what's happening in the world. Not until they're about 6 and they go into the second period of development. But that first period is it's all wonder, experimentation. They're pure beauty,
Yeah.
except, every once in a while they're not, but we all have those moments, right?
Yes, we do.
Yeah, Gina, you're making me want to
Parents
work.
and educators.
You're making me want to work in early childhood education. Did you have the class with Dr. David Brody at Hebrew College? I know he teaches one of the classes there on early childhood education. That was the first class I took.
No, I think that early childhood education, of course, I'm super biased, but is the most important period of time. A lot of families are thinking about the older ages as being the most important, but it is actually between the birth and 5 that you're setting that foundation for how children are going to think, because they're getting conscious and unconscious messages from us all the time about their own self-worth, about what's okay to say or not say or wonder about. And I think in early childhood, the focus has been for many years to allow children to just explore and to help guide them. I kind of look at myself as framework. We're framing the world for them, so that then when they jump into that really concrete learning, they've got all of it with them already. They can go back in and reach it and then bring it forward.
I definitely agree. Those years are so important. I mean, we see that with our own kids, just how they're growing and developing. What do you find to be the biggest challenge that you faced as an educator?
I think the biggest challenge, prior to COVID, so we won't even talk about that, but prior to that would be that probably the expectations that adults have of children. I think that, we early childhood educators are always talking about following the child and allowing them to be who they are. But there often is another agenda that we naturally have. I'm a parent. I know, my kids were when they were born, I had dreams for them and I wanted certain things. I still want things for them. I've learned over the years that I have to step back and allow them, let it unfold or blossom in their own way. And every child is really different.
Right.
Of my 3 children, they are all completely different. Everything developmentally, all of it. I mean, the way they approach the world, with the same parents in the same home, they just are different. So I think that's the difficult part, is having adults just take a minute. Something as simple as when you ask a child to do something, you allow them 10 seconds for it to register in their brain before you ask again to put their shoes on or to get their coat or to whatever it is that we want them to do, because we're adults and we think quickly. And it might not register by the time we've asked the second or third time for that child. Simple things like this. I think that that's the big piece, and these are solvable things because it's all about education and communication.
Hmm. Yeah, I definitely find that too. What drives you to continue teaching?
Because I want the world to be a better place, and I want to change the world. I want to see more compassion. I want to see kindness. I want children to have a chance to be grounded in reality instead of, uh, like the commercialism that we see around us. And I'm not saying that in, that every family is that way, but we're really hit with a lot of different stuff in our world.
Right.
And children are under an incredible amount of pressure, and they don't need to be under that pressure because it all equals out in the end. So part of the reason that I work training teachers is because I want them to just take a breath and not be focused on the outcome of the test or the end game. In education, we're playing the long game. We're playing the slow and steady building and allowing and unfolding of information, of discovery. And then that's all connected in with our values and beliefs and all of those pieces in there. It all works together. And I think that's what really motivates me. I want them to see beauty, and I want them to see beauty in themselves, so that we can have a kinder and gentler world. And it's one of those things where I always think, people will probably like roll their eyes, like, oh yeah, right, that's going to happen. But I really believe that it can happen, and I've seen it happen. I've seen children just respond in ways that adults don't, where they're really comforting their friends and understanding what it means to be friend. And we do that by modeling all of that to children.
So what advice would you give to other educators who are just starting out?
I think there's a couple things. You need to understand child development. I think that young teachers need to really be on their game and reading about brain development and child development so that you really understand what is a realistic expectation of children. So many times we want them to be older than they are, and especially children who are very verbal. So my oldest child was talking very, very young. She was talking and singing and doing, like we were doing rhyming together, and she always seemed older than she was. But I had to remind myself that emotionally she wasn't. And that's part of what understanding child development is about. I think that's number one. And number two is to bring in yourself into the classroom, into your school, that when you are passionate about your life and what you believe, children see it. They see your authenticity, and I think that's really, really important. So you can't be in an environment where those things clash. And I learned that very young. You can't work for people that you're not in line with, um, or a school that has a philosophy that doesn't fit your own personal life, if that makes sense.
Right.
That those values, because children know when we're not telling them the truth. And what happens is we give them this unconscious message that adults don't tell the truth. And we don't want that. We want them to know that adults are here to help them and that we do tell the truth. So that's part of it. So I guess that's a lot of advice for a young educator. But what I would say is connect to yourself. The brighter you are, the more you can offer to children. Some of them are going to take it and some of them aren't. And I think that's okay too, because we connect with different people in different ways.
I agree, and it's like that for parenting too. That it, understanding where children
Yeah,
are and how their brains work, and also being authentic. They can tell if you're not, if you're acting a certain way or you're telling them to do something but you're not doing it. They see that disconnect.
absolutely. I think, as a leader of a school, connecting with parents was really important to me, to be there when they arrived or when they picked up, to talk to them, to get to know them. People often would come to me, and ask for advice. How do I get my child out of my bed? I'm tired, and they're they're turning around all night, all of those, that kind of stuff. And some of what I do is just to give you hope. You're going to take a shower again. You will sleep through the night again. It's just this brief period of time when they're young. Uh, So you understand what I'm talking about,
Oh,
right?
yes, we do.
I remember as a young teacher, a parent asked me, and this is stuck in my mind the whole time. She said that her child kept coming in her bed, and I told her because I didn't know any better. I said, "Oh, that's not okay. You really need to, get them in their own bedroom." And I think that she walked away feeling really bad. And then fast forward 10 years later, and I have three little kids under 5, and the only thing I wanted to do was sleep.
With sleep.
So we had everybody was trying to conclude. We were all in the same space, and it doesn't last forever. That's the whole thing. Is it just um, it's okay. All that's okay. And I think a lot of times we're too hard on ourselves. We want to do things right, and it's okay. Most of it is okay anyway.
Yeah. Well, that's reassuring for us with young kids here.
Absolutely.
What would you say are one or two things that Jewish children must have in order to build a Jewish foundation or a Torah foundation?
Well, I think the first thing is it has to be in their home. I don't think you can. Sometimes Jewish educators will, parents will come and they'll be like, "Can you make my child Jewish?" It's like putting them in the wash. Can you do this for me? Can you be the person that teaches them the value in the Hebrew and all of those pieces? Sure, we can do that. It's technique, right? But the authentic piece comes when you are celebrating Shabbat together, when you are preparing your home, when you're having conversations about what does it mean, how does it feel, and how do you contribute. Children want to contribute to our lives, and that's probably one of the most important things we can do is give them jobs and let them know that what they're doing and how they're part of that of your family makes a difference. Learning is by example. Children are going to do what we do. So and I'm telling you, they always know what we're doing. I used to think like, how could
We
they
do.
possibly know everything? But now that my kids are grown, they tell me stuff, and I'm like, how did you know that? And they're just like watching us all the time, and they have supersonic hearing, and they hear
True.
us talking, right?
Oh, yeah. It's so true.
So, I think that this is where the authenticity comes in is this isn't something we do outside of ourselves. It's who we are. This is all part of our life. It's not a separate part of our life. And that's a really important piece. And I think when you have families that don't have maybe a lot of authentic experience going on for whatever reason, maybe they don't know how to do it, right? As educators, we can kind of throw things out and help give them little pebbles of wisdom to help with those pieces. And I think in school they can also get it. You just need one really pivotal adult to help you with those things, but it's awesome when you have more.
For sure.
Yeah, wow. So Gina, there's a lot of gems in there. We're gonna have to comb through and pull them out after. But we're at our final question here, which is,
Okay.
and I don't know if you want to maybe now touch on some of the COVID stuff or just, but it's about the future. So what does successful Jewish education look like in the future, in your opinion?
I think that successful Jewish education is about connection all the time. It's really about connection and also the flexibility to kind of adapt. That's what we're learning now as the whole world, right? We're learning how to adapt um, to a situation none of us expected, and I don't think anybody really wants, right?
Right.
But by looking at the pieces of what's okay about this, right? It's got to be okay. We can't just say we're going to wait until we get back to normal. This is our new normal, and we have to figure out how to make this work. And I think that it's really stretching people, but it could be very cool. And that's what I've tried to do. Um, my family is spread all over the place. My husband is stuck at our house in Michigan,
Wow.
and so I've been alone for 6 months. Probably this is the first time in my entire adult life that I've ever been alone. So I
Wow.
decided, instead of feeling bad for myself, which I did periodically, um, I was going to really try to figure out all the benefits of this. And when I wake in the morning and I say my prayers and I am thinking about how glorious it is to have another day, I'm thinking about those pieces of it. And I think as educators, we need to help children. Yes, you have to wear a mask when you go to school, but you know, find that piece that makes it okay for that to happen. Because
Right.
children can adapt. They adapt really fast. It's
It's
us
true.
grown-ups that have a really hard time, that wanted to go back to February of 2020 and not be March, because I
Right.
don't think education is ever going to go back. I think that we're always going to have to be thinking about um, pandemics and closeness and how we are in groups, and it's okay for
Right.
us to kind of adapt.
For sure. I actually wanted to ask you something about because I remember you mentioned that you train other educators. Do you
Yes.
particularly train Jewish Montessori teachers, non-Jewish, both? What's your experience there?
So I've done both. There aren't a lot of Jewish Montessori training centers. There are some, and I think it's kind of emerging a little bit more. I currently work for two Montessori training centers. There's regular, they're not, they don't have a particular religious bent to them
Okay.
at all. But I love teaching. I love being with the adult learner, and I love seeing them awaken and kind of get it. When you see that pop in their brain of, oh my goodness, I didn't know I could do this, or that is pretty amazing. I mean, I think my dream would be to have a Jewish Montessori training center. Like I
Okay.
said, there are some, but it's not really accessible. It's not really accessible.
I see. Do you think that's something that's going to change?
You know, I I don't know. I I think it could change. I think that having things online is going to change how we navigate training. So we can still meet in person, but we can also have things available for people. For example, that don't want to be in class on Friday and Saturday.
Right.
Um, who can pick up that video or watch that course on Sunday or Saturday night. Whereas in the past, you had to be there, and it was very, very hard for anyone that couldn't, by their own choice and their religious beliefs, to kind of interact in that way, and that makes it really hard. Also, I think I have a lot of opinions about how training can go, but I think that um, being able to Zoom really helps. If you have, 3 or 4 children at home, going away for a month to do training could be really difficult
Right.
for the family, right?
Definitely. Well, Gina, thank you so much for joining us today. We are so grateful that you gave us some of your input and tips, and it's been such a pleasure speaking with you.
I really appreciate you giving me an opportunity to talk about the things that I love, and I just want to encourage you to keep talking and learning and doing what you're doing, because this is awesome.
Oh,
Yeah,
thank
thanks.
you.
We'll try to keep it going, and if we see any success, we'll have to have you back for a check in.
For sure, round two.
That sounds great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, our pleasure, and we wish you a Shana Tova. Have a wonderful new year.